Hello. We have come to the final chapter of Roald Dahl's Matilda. Chapter 21 is called A New Home and sees the resolution of many of the struggles and a closure to the themes that we have discussed throughout these videos. This chapter opens up with Miss This chapter opens up with the fact that Miss Trunchbull has not turned up to school. Miss Trilby, the deputy head, has gone to the brick house the Georgian house where she lives, which we know is the honey home, and found that Miss Trunchbull has effectively left the home. And soon after, we find out that Miss Honey repossesses the family assets, her family home, and this is the beginning of the next phase in her life. And as we're able to see Miss Honey and Matilda having tea regularly, and their relationship building, and it is all very harmonious in comparison to what it was like in both of their lives before. Matilda also benefits directly from the third miracle, and the school where she attends has become a place where her teachers appropriately challenge her and educate her, so she's also contented. I'm going to read the passage that we're looking at now from the book. Matilda does share with Miss Honey that her powers have stopped working, and I'll go to the passage now. Miss Honey's theory is this: while you were in my class, you had nothing to do, nothing to make you struggle. Your fairly enormous brain was going crazy with frustration. It was bubbling and boiling away like mad inside your head. There was tremendous energy bottled up in there, with nowhere to go. And somehow or other, you were able to shoot that energy out through your eyes and make objects move. But now things are different. You're in the top form, competing against things. You're in the top form, competing against children more than twice your age, and all that mental energy is being used up in class. Your brain is for the first time having to struggle and strive and keep really busy, which is great. That's only a theory, mind you, and it may be a silly one, but I don't think it's far off the mark. Let's look at the expression far off the mark, which means when someone says or writes something that's off the mark, it means that they are incorrect, they're not right. So Miss Honey here is saying that she doesn't think that she's far off the mark. That is, we look at her theory of why Matilda has lost her power in terms of the fact that Matilda was probably so focused on two things: fighting injustice, and also with the lack of education, this basically allowed her to focus all of this excess energy she had into putting things right, into fighting this injustice. And her own desire to help herself, Miss Honey, and other students morphed into this superpower, and she wanted to right the wrongs in her world. Now, therefore, this supernatural power seems to have stemmed from necessity. Now that she has, in fact, managed to put things right, we have Miss Honey living in her family home, and Matilda is being adequately challenged in school. And this allows Matilda to be basically a normal, even though she's exceptionally intelligent, child. Her teachers now support her, and her relationship with Miss Honey is able to evolve into a great friendship, and Miss Honey is the trusted adult in Matilda's life. Therefore, with the educational institutions playing the part that they should always have played in Matilda's life, the power subsides, she is challenged, and even other other things, such as her parents have now receded into the background. At this part of the chapter, we don't really hear about them, and she seems very content with the support that she is getting at school. There's nothing to fix, and therefore there's no need for the power to stick around. As the chapter continues, Matilda and Miss Honey continue having tea, and we see Matilda learning what a true caregiver should look like in her life. So Miss Honey takes an interest in Matilda's own interests, and she engages with her, and she's taking an active role as a third parent to Matilda. And definitely we know that she is far more engaged than the Wormwoods ever were with Matilda. One afternoon, Matilda goes back home and finds the Wormwoods packing, and they tell her that she is going to leave with them, and they are all escaping to Spain. Now, Matilda's reluctance to leave is captured in that one phrase that she says, "I don't want to go to Spain. I love it here, and I love my school." This is just one of the most significant lines in terms of helping us understand what education has brought to Matilda. She is settled, she is stable, she is challenged where she is. She loves and trusts Miss Honey and the teachers at her school. They are there for her, while the Wormwoods have never been. And it's very typical that Matilda sees this happening, and what does she do? She springs to action, and she dashes to Miss Honey's house and lets her know what happened. Miss Honey goes with Matilda to her parents' home and essentially offers to keep Matilda. I'm going to the passage in the book here. "I would love to have Matilda," Miss Honey said. "I would look after her with loving care, Mr. Wormwood, and I would pay for everything. She wouldn't cost you a penny. But it was not my idea, it was Matilda's, and I will not agree to take her without your full and willing consent." "Come on, Harry," the mother said, pushing a suitcase into the back seat. "Why don't you let her go if that's what she wants? It will be one less to look after." "I'm in a hurry," the father said. "I've got a plane to catch. If she wants to stay, let her stay. It's fine with me." Matilda leapt into Miss Honey's arms and hugged her, and Miss Honey hugged her back. And then the mother and father and brother were inside the car, and the car was pulling away with the tires screaming. The brother gave a wave through the rear window, but the other two didn't even look back. Miss Honey was still hugging the tiny girl in her arms, and neither of them said a word as they stood there, watching the big black car tearing round the corner at the end of the road and disappearing forever into the distance. This is the final paragraph of the book, and in it wraps up a number of things. We have the fact that Miss Wormwood's insistence that she had gotten her financial security through her businessman husband clearly unravels over here. She was clearly misguided, as we felt throughout the novel by various hints. And I think most significantly is this final interaction, physical interaction between Matilda and Miss Honey, where Matilda leaps into Miss Honey's arms and hugs her, and Miss Honey hugs her back. And the response, it is a very intimate interaction, which Matilda has clearly lacked from her parents throughout the novel, and is getting from Miss Honey. The Wormwoods, as we know, have never cared very much for her or given any kind of support, and in fact this is seen to the very end, where they dash off in the car, and they don't even look back at their daughter, which highlights just how little they cared about her at all. There is a moment where Mike does look back, and that sort of insinuates that perhaps there was a little kindness in him and he was more than what we saw. What's important here is that Matilda, in the end, doesn't just get what she wants, she gets what she needs. She gets to be with Miss Honey. She gets to be with someone who cares for her genuinely. And this is not from a biological parent. And I think the novel supports the idea that we can all find care and love and trust and all of these things, and they do not need to be from maybe family. There are other ways of getting that support out in the world. And finally, by letting Matilda stay with Miss Honey at the end of the book for the rest of her life, we see that love and care is what Matilda desired most, and through her life with Miss Honey, she will be guaranteed the support she needs to continue her education, which is clearly one of the core premises of the book and what the author supports the most. To wrap up the analysis of this book, we're going to look at the conclusion drawn in the themes that we've been looking at in this time. The first theme that we'll look at is women, financial security, and ethics. We will start with Miss Trunchbull, who obviously from the outside looked untouchable and successful. However, it was a little girl, and yes, Matilda's a superpower, but however, it is the fear of the ghost of Mr. Honey that brings her to return the house, the assets, and everything that she owed Miss Honey back, and beyond that, leave without a trace, as she knows that the community would not support her, and obviously she felt crushed with the idea that she would be known as a criminal and have basically no standing in the wider community. Secondly, Mrs. Wormwood, who always went for looks rather than books in order to achieve her financial security. We see that she may have had the nice house and could potentially afford the fancy makeup, but her financial security was a false appearance as much as her idea of her own beauty. As Miss Honey said, it doesn't surprise me. Your father is in with a bunch of crooks. Everyone in the village knows that. So everybody knew that this was just an appearance, and the Wormwoods are forced to pack up and leave as they are being persecuted because of Mr. Wormwood's criminal activities and unethical business practices. And what we have is doing the wrong thing, being immoral, is not going to bring you any security in the least. And in this case, we see the Wormwoods having to move to Spain. Finally, we have Miss Honey, and it is her moral superiority which the novel supports. We have her earning her own money, which she gets through having followed an education, and it is this hard work which is supported. But above that, there is also the fact that her innate goodness is what wins Matilda's loyalty, and this is what motivates Matilda to take steps to frighten Miss Trunchbull away and recapture the family fortune. Therefore, this is how she gets the justice that she deserves. Matilda, as we know, is supportive of this approach, and she knows that the correct path to success is, like Miss Honey, education and financial independence through honest, hard work. In conclusion, the novel suggests that financial security is only truly secure when a woman is able to earn her own paycheck and can support herself. Therefore, neither relying on a husband like Miss Wormwood or violence like Mrs. Trunchbull are able to get you what you want. The next theme is education and opportunity. From this final chapter, we have already discussed Cruncham Hall, without Miss Trunchbull in it, is now able to give Matilda this alternative future, a better future with stability and a place where she can further herself that didn't exist before. And that is, as we know, what the novel sees education as being, a place where individuals can get an alternative future, as is the case for Matilda. Also, which we see from the very beginning in the initial interactions with Miss Honey, we understand that through Miss Honey's support for Matilda and her education, Matilda learns to advocate for herself. That means she manages to fight for what she thinks is right. Now, this continues all the way to the end, where Matilda, in the final chapter, has the guts, is brave enough to fight back and go to her parents and tell them that this is not what she wants to be doing, that Spain is, and moving away from her beloved school and Miss Honey and everything that has now come to fruition after the third miracle, is not what she wants for her future. And that we can really say that this is a result of Miss Honey and the other teachers supporting Matilda. Finally, in this theme, we see that Matilda prioritizes her education, and this basically releases her in a couple of ways. So in her argument with Mr. Wormwood about moving to Spain, she shows how much she values her education, and she explains that she doesn't want to leave because she loves her school. In doing this, she achieves two things. She will no longer have to deal with her parents' neglect, and also she will no longer have to deal with their refusal in her prioritizing her own education. Through choosing Miss Honey as her guardian, she knows that Miss Honey will support her in her education. As we know, Miss Honey thinks that she would be able to attend college in just a few years, and this would guarantee that Matilda will have the opportunity to do that and reach independence even quicker. In conclusion, even though Matilda is, of course, a genius and this is not real life, what this does say is that children who are interested in education have a way out of neglectful situations, as we've said before. It is basically by applying yourself through schooling and also gaining skills that can bring you out of a neglectful situation and potentially personal life and being independent. Also, through education, the novel insinuates that you will be able to find teachers and a support network that are willing and able to support you where your parents may or may not do so. The next theme is adults, children, and power. Now, of course, Matilda's power and what she does in order to restore Miss Honey's home and wealth is not true. This wouldn't happen in real life. Matilda is able to drive Miss Trunchbull away. She restores Miss Honey's home and wealth, and the Cruncham Hall, the school, is able to become an institution where children can thrive and grow and be educated without the cruelty of Miss Trunchbull. And finally, it also sets Matilda and Miss Honey up for a lovely life in the Honey home, which they have been able to bring back to Miss Honey. More real is the fact that Matilda is able to advocate for herself when she is in a position where her parents are going to leave for Spain and she doesn't want to leave with them. Whereas Miss Honey is aware of the fact that she cannot simply decide to take Matilda away without her parents' consent. It is Matilda who fights for what she wants and is able to convince her parents to allow her to stay with Miss Honey. It is through her insistence that Miss Honey also tries to fight for that. So that wasn't a superpower, but that is real life. And the novel does give us this situation where we can learn that we are always capable of changing a situation that we're in. As we've said in this fictional book, we have to understand that this is just fun. It's a fun book, although it does point at some very, very meaningful themes. But going back to what it brings to younger readers who mightn't look into everything that's all of these themes that's been brought up, you have to understand that it is just also satisfying for a young reader to see this inversion of the usual power structure, where Matilda is able to make Miss Trunchbull flee, and she's able to change her situation by convincing her parents to let her stay with Miss Honey. Potentially, the most meaningful message in this theme is for those older readers, because it stresses the importance for adults to protect vulnerable children. It is a warning for grown-ups and for those people who are in more powerful positions to not abuse their power over younger children. Children are depicted over and over again as being powerless and weaker, which they are, and the message is that they should be shown respect, and since they are unable to fix the injustices that they face, it's up to adults to support them and to behave respectfully towards them and use their more powerful social positions to aid and to protect the vulnerable children in their lives. Finally, there is still the consideration that if adults do not behave properly and do not use their power to support children, children still can come up with antics and tricks to make abusive adults' lives pretty miserable. The final theme that we will look at is the power of fighting injustice. The novel holds a number of messages here, and the first one that we'll look at is the fact that in Matilda, realizing that it is her headmistress, Miss Trunchbull, who she already despises, that is keeping Miss Honey in abject poverty, it is that which allows her to harness this mysterious superpower and brings her to have Miss Trunchbull return all the assets to Miss Honey and also leave the town, escape. Essentially, what the novel is trying to suggest is that simply in recognizing injustice and refusing to accept it, it is akin to having a superpower. Also, it is the prerequisite to improving one's own life and the world. The second point is that this power that is wielded by Matilda through her recognition of these injustices leads to an improvement in everybody's life. By using her superpower, Matilda is able to get rid of Miss Trunchbull, justice is brought to Miss Honey, and all of the students' and teachers' lives are also improved at Truncheon Hall once Miss Trunchbull is gone. On the other hand, it makes us think of Miss Honey, because Miss Honey is quite the opposite of Matilda, and the novel shows how damaging it can be to ignore injustices, to accept them, and not to do anything to change them. Finally, it is the importance of moving from recognition of injustice to action that the novel highlights. Miss Honey was too afraid to advocate for herself, and therefore she must rely on a child to bring justice in her life and change her abusive situation. The novel shows that the first difficult step to righting wrongs is, of course, recognizing it, but throughout, and we see this in Matilda, it is essential to challenge this anger at injustice through your recognition to action and move on in order to make change. This wraps up chapter 21 and the analysis of the themes that we have found in Matilda by Roald Dahl. Thank you for joining us.